The desolate expanse of Calith 9 stretched endlessly under twin moons, casting eerie shadows across the frost-coated dunes. Charlie White stood at the edge of the makeshift camp, his breath forming misty clouds in the frigid air. The planet's harsh beauty was a stark contrast to the warmth of Earth, but after weeks of surveying, he'd grown accustomed to its unforgiving nature. A piercing howl shattered the night's silence, causing Charlie to snap to attention. It wasn't the first time he'd heard strange noises on this alien world, but something about this cry seemed different, desperate, almost mournful. "Joe, Carrie, you hear that?" Charlie called over his shoulder, his hand instinctively moving to the plasma rifle slung across his back. Joe Foster, hunched over an array of holographic displays, barely looked up. "Probably just the wind playing tricks again, Charlie. These canyons are full of weird acoustics." Carrie Chong, their xenobiologist, paused her specimen cataloging. "I don't know, Joe. That sounded alive." The howl came again, louder this time, sending a chill down Charlie's spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. "I'm going to check it out. You two stay here and keep working on the atmospheric data. I'll radio if I find anything." "Charlie, wait!" Carrie started, but he was already moving, his boots crunching on the icy ground. As Charlie trekked across the barren landscape, guided by the occasional echoes of that haunting cry, his mind raced through potential scenarios. Calith 9 was supposed to be devoid of large fauna. That's why they'd chosen it for their geological survey. If there was something out there big enough to make that sound, it could change everything about their mission. An hour passed, and Charlie found himself at the edge of a steep ravine. The howling had stopped, but now he could hear something else. A low, rumbling growl interspersed with high-pitched whimpers. Carefully, he activated his night vision goggles and peered over the edge. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Huddled at the bottom of the ravine was a creature unlike anything he'd ever encountered. It was massive, easily the size of a bear, with thick fur matted with ice and grime. But it wasn't the creature's size that struck Charlie. It was the unmistakable canine features, reminiscent of the dire wolves from Earth's ancient past. The alien wolf-like beast was curled protectively around two smaller forms. Cubs, Charlie realized. But his heart sank as he noticed a third cub, lying motionless at the bottom of a deep crevice just beyond the family's reach. Charlie's training kicked in, assessing the situation with clinical precision. The adult creature was clearly in distress. Its flanks heaved with labored breaths, and even from this distance, he could see signs of severe injury and malnutrition. Patches of fur were missing, revealing raw, infected skin underneath. The creature's eyes were sunken, and its tongue lolled from its mouth, a clear sign of dehydration. Whatever this species was, it didn't belong in Calith 9's harsh environment. Slowly, Charlie began to make his way down the ravine's slope. He knew it was risky, but every instinct told him he couldn't leave these creatures to die. As he got closer, the adult's head snapped up, baring wickedly sharp teeth in a snarl that reverberated through the canyon. "Easy there, big fella," Charlie murmured, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm not here to hurt you." The creature's eyes locked onto him, and Charlie felt a jolt of recognition. There was intelligence in that gaze, a depth of understanding that went beyond mere animal instinct, but there was also fear and desperation. Without warning, the adult lunged at Charlie, its massive jaws snapping inches from his face. Charlie stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding the attack. The creature's movements were sluggish, weakened by its poor condition, but the ferocity in its eyes was unmistakable. "Whoa, easy!" Charlie shouted, his heart pounding. He raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. "I'm trying to help you!" The creature snarled again, placing itself between Charlie and the cubs. It was clear that despite its weakened state, the adult was willing to fight to the death to protect its young. Charlie's mind raced. He needed to gain their trust, but more importantly, he needed to rescue that third cub before it was too late. Hey there, hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel to grow and reach more people. Now let's find out what comes next. Taking a deep breath, he made a decision that went against every safety protocol drilled into him during training. He turned his back on the snarling adult and moved towards the crevice where the motionless cub lay. The reaction was instantaneous. A blur of motion in his peripheral vision was all the warning Charlie had before he felt the impact of the adult's charge. He managed to roll with the blow, using the creature's momentum to avoid the worst of its attack. But as he came up in a defensive crouch, he realized he'd miscalculated. The adult wasn't attacking him, it was trying to reach its fallen cub. In that moment of shared understanding, Charlie saw his opportunity. "I can help," he said firmly, locking eyes with the creature once more. "Let me help you." For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, they stared at each other. Then, almost imperceptibly, the adult stepped back. Charlie didn't waste a second. He scrambled to the edge of the crevice, assessing the situation. The cub had fallen onto a narrow ledge about 10 feet down. It was breathing, but barely. Using his climbing gear, Charlie fashioned a makeshift harness and began to lower himself into the darkness. The descent felt like it took hours, though it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. Charlie's heart pounded in his ears as he finally reached the unconscious cub. Up close, he could see the rise and fall of its chest, shallow but steady. The cub was in even worse shape than its parent, its small body emaciated and covered in frost. Gently, Charlie scooped the small form into his arms, marveling at how something so alien could feel so familiar. As he cradled the cub, he felt a faint pulse of warmth, whether from the creature's body heat or something else, he couldn't be sure. But in that moment, Charlie knew he'd do whatever it took to save this family. The climb back up was treacherous, made even more challenging by his precious cargo. But finally, Charlie hauled himself over the edge, cradling the cub against his chest. He turned to face the adult, half expecting another attack. Instead, he found himself transfixed by a sight that would be seared into his memory forever. The massive creature stood stock still, its eyes wide with an emotion Charlie could only describe as hope. Slowly, reverently, he placed the rescued cub on the ground between them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a gentleness that belied its size, the adult nuzzled its fallen offspring. A soft whine escaped its throat, and to Charlie's amazement, the cub stirred, letting out a tiny squeak. The relief that flooded through him was overwhelming. Charlie sank to his knees, suddenly exhausted. He watched as the adult carefully picked up the rescued cub, carrying it back to its siblings. The family huddled together, and for the first time since he'd encountered them, Charlie saw the tension leave the adult's body. Remembering his supplies, Charlie slowly retrieved his pack. The adult watched warily, but made no move to attack. Carefully, he pulled out his canteen and a package of emergency rations. "Here," he said softly, pouring some water into a shallow depression in the rock. "You need this more than I do." The adult hesitated, then slowly approached the makeshift water bowl. It sniffed cautiously before lapping eagerly at the life-giving liquid. Charlie's heart clenched as he watched the creature's desperation. It was clear they hadn't had access to water in days, maybe longer. As the adult drank, Charlie opened the ration pack. The smell of concentrated nutrients filled the air, and the creature's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. Slowly, Charlie broke off a piece of the dense food bar and held it out. For a long moment, the adult stared at the offering. Then, with aching slowness, it stepped forward and delicately took the food from Charlie's hand. The touch of its muzzle against his palm sent a shiver through him. Not of fear, but of awe at the trust being placed in him. As the adult chewed, Charlie prepared more water and food for the cubs. He watched in amazement as the parent gently nudged its offspring towards the provisions, encouraging them to eat and drink. The smallest cub, still weak from its ordeal, struggled to reach the water. Without thinking, Charlie scooped it up, cradling it against his chest as he helped it drink from his cupped hand. The adult tensed for a moment, but made no move to stop him. As the cub's tiny tongue lapped at the water in his palm, Charlie felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. These creatures, whatever they were, needed help, and he was determined to give it to them. As the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Charlie knew he needed to contact his team, but he was reluctant to break the fragile peace that had settled over the ravine. The adult creature had curled protectively around its cubs once more, but its eyes remained fixed on Charlie, watching his every move. Slowly telegraphing his movements, Charlie reached for his communicator. "Carrie, Joe," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You're not going to believe what I've found. I need you to bring all the supplies you can carry. And Carrie, bring your xenobiology kit. We've got some new friends who need our help." As he waited for his team to arrive, Charlie settled in, keeping a watchful eye on the alien family. He knew that what he'd done, interfering with an alien species, potentially jeopardizing their entire mission, would have consequences. But looking at the creatures before him, seeing the trust slowly building in the adult's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Whatever came next, he was committed now. These creatures needed him, and somehow, he knew that humanity needed them too. The adventure was just beginning, and Charlie White was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The sound of approaching footsteps made both Charlie and the adult creature tense. But as Carrie and Joe came into view, their arms laden with supplies, Charlie felt a surge of hope. Together they would find a way to help these magnificent beings, and in doing so, they might just change the course of human history. As the first rays of Calith 9's harsh sun crested the horizon, Charlie heard the distant whine of the team's hover transport. He tensed, glancing at the Vokran family huddled nearby. The adult's ears pricked forward, a low growl rumbling in its throat. "Easy," Charlie murmured, holding out a placating hand. "They're friends. They're here to help." The transport touched down at the edge of the ravine, kicking up a swirl of frost-coated sand. Carrie was the first to emerge, her eyes wide as she took in the scene before her. Joe followed close behind, his arms laden with equipment. "Charlie, what in the name of—" Carrie's voice trailed off as she caught sight of the Vokran. "Oh my God." Charlie stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Guys, I'd like you to meet our new friends. They're in pretty rough shape and they need our help." Carrie approached cautiously, her xenobiologist's instincts kicking in. Her gaze swept over the adult Vokran and its cubs, cataloging injuries and signs of malnutrition. "This is incredible," she breathed. "They shouldn't be here. This climate, it's all wrong for them." Joe hung back, his eyes darting nervously between Charlie and the alien creatures. "Are you sure they're safe? That thing looks like it could tear us apart." "They're scared and hurt," Charlie said firmly, "but they're intelligent. They understand we're trying to help." As if to prove his point, the adult Vokran let out a soft whine, nudging one of its cubs towards the water Charlie had provided earlier. The cub stumbled forward on weak legs, lapping eagerly at the precious liquid. Carrie's professional demeanor cracked, her expression softening. "Oh, you poor things," she murmured. She turned to Charlie, her eyes blazing with determination. "What do you need me to do?" For the next few hours, the ravine became a flurry of activity. Carrie set up a makeshift medical station, carefully examining each of the Vokrans. Her touch was gentle but sure as she cleaned wounds, applied regenerative gel, and administered nutrient injections. Charlie stayed close to the adult, murmuring reassurances and offering comfort. To his amazement, the creature seemed to understand, remaining calm even as Carrie tended to its injuries. Joe, meanwhile, had set up a portable lab, his fingers flying over holographic displays as he analyzed data. "Charlie," he called out, his voice tight with excitement. "You need to see this." Charlie reluctantly left the Vokran's side, joining Joe at his workstation. "What have you found?" Joe pointed to a 3D scan rotating above his console. "There's a chip embedded in the adult's shoulder. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Definitely not of human origin." Charlie leaned in, studying the intricate patterns etched into the chip's surface. Can you access it? Figure out where they came from? Joe's brow furrowed in concentration as he tapped out a series of commands. It's heavily encrypted, but... Wait, I think I've got something. A stream of alien characters flowed across the screen. It's not transmitting anymore, but there's still some data stored locally. Give me a minute to run it through our translation matrix. As Joe worked, Charlie returned to the Vokrans. Carrie was just finishing up, her face grim but determined. They're stabilized, she reported. But Charlie, they need more than we can give them here. This planet is killing them slowly. Charlie nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. Joe's working on decrypting a chip we found. With any luck, it'll tell us where they came from. As if on cue, Joe called out, I've got it. The chip contains coordinates and some basic biological data. It looks like these creatures, the Vokrans according to the file, are native to a moon orbiting a gas giant about 3 systems over. Charlie's heart raced. They had a destination, a chance to save these magnificent beings. But the implications of what they'd discovered were staggering. So they were brought here deliberately, he said, his voice low with anger. Abandoned to die on a planet completely unsuited to their needs. Carrie's expression hardened. It's unconscionable. Whoever did this, we'll deal with that later, Charlie interrupted. Right now, we need to focus on getting them to safety. He turned to his teammates, his voice taking on the authoritative tone of a mission leader. I know this isn't what we came here for. Our orders were to complete the geological survey of Calith 9. But I'm asking you both, can we really turn our backs on them now? Joe shifted uncomfortably. Charlie, I get it. I do. But we're talking about completely abandoning our mission. There could be serious consequences. I don't care, Carrie said fiercely. This is more important than any survey. We have a chance to save an entire family, maybe even gather crucial data about a species we've never encountered before. How can we pass that up? Charlie looked between his 2 friends, then back at the Vokrans. The adult met his gaze, and in that moment, he felt the weight of its trust. This creature, despite all it had suffered, was placing its life and the lives of its cubs in human hands. We're doing this, Charlie said, his voice brooking no argument. Joe, plot a course to those coordinates. Carrie, prepare a containment unit in the transport, something that'll keep them comfortable and safe during the journey. I'll start breaking down camp. As the team sprang into action, Charlie knelt beside the adult Vokran. Slowly, telegraphing his movements, he placed a hand on its massive shoulder. The creature tensed for a moment, then leaned into his touch. We're going to get you home, Charlie murmured. I promise. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Joe reconfigured their transport's navigation systems, plotting a course that would take them far beyond their original mission parameters. Carrie transformed the cargo hold into a makeshift habitat, using their limited resources to create an environment that mimicked the Vokran's native climate as closely as possible. Charlie, meanwhile, focused on building trust. He worked tirelessly, bringing food and water, cleaning wounds, and simply sitting with the Vokrans. Slowly but surely, he felt the barriers between them crumbling. As the twin suns of Calith 9 began to set, casting long shadows across the ravine, Charlie knew it was time. All right, he called to his team. Let's move them. Moving the Vokrans proved to be a delicate operation. The cubs, still weak from their ordeal, were easy enough to carry, but the adult was another matter entirely. Even in its weakened state, it was far too heavy for them to lift. We'll have to guide it, Carrie suggested. Coax it into the transport. Charlie nodded, steeling himself for what he knew would be a challenging task. He approached the adult Vokran, locking eyes with the magnificent creature. Hey there, big guy, he said softly. I know you're scared. I know this is all strange and new. But I need you to trust me one more time. We're going to take you somewhere safe. Somewhere you and your little ones can heal and grow strong again. What do you say? Will you come with us? For a long moment, the Vokran simply stared at him. Then, with aching slowness, it rose to its feet. Charlie's breath caught in his throat as he fully appreciated the creature's size and power. Even weakened, it was a force to be reckoned with. Carefully, Charlie began to back towards the transport, maintaining eye contact with the Vokran. "That's it," he encouraged. "Nice and easy. You're doing great." Step by painstaking step, they made their way up the ravine's slope. Twice, the adult Vokran faltered, its strength nearly giving out. But each time Charlie was there, his voice steady and reassuring, urging it onwards. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the transport. The cubs were already settled in the makeshift habitat, curled up together on a bed of thermal blankets. With one final effort, the adult Vokran heaved itself into the cargo hold, collapsing beside its offspring. Charlie's legs gave out, and he sank to the ground, his back against the transport's hull. He was exhausted, every muscle aching, but a fierce joy burned in his chest. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd saved this family. As Carrie and Joe made final preparations for takeoff, Charlie allowed himself a moment to simply observe the Vokrans. The adult had curled protectively around its cubs, but its eyes remained fixed on Charlie, and in that gaze, he saw something that took his breath away: gratitude, understanding, and the beginnings of trust. "All right, team," Joe's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're ready for liftoff. Better strap in. This is going to be one hell of a ride." As the transport's engines roared to life, Charlie felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were about to embark on a journey that would take them far beyond the boundaries of their original mission. There would be consequences, he knew, questions to answer, superiors to face. But looking at the Vokrans, seeing the way the adult nuzzled its cubs, Charlie knew with absolute certainty that they were doing the right thing. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, humans and Vokrans united by an unlikely bond of trust and compassion. The transport lifted off, leaving the harsh landscape of Calith 9 behind. As they soared into the star-studded blackness of space, Charlie felt a sense of anticipation building within him. This was more than just a rescue mission now. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a chance to change the way humanity interacted with the galaxy around them. With one last look at the Vokrans, Charlie strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat beside Joe. "All right," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's bring them home." As the transport accelerated, pushing deeper into uncharted space, none of them could have imagined the incredible journey that lay ahead, or the far-reaching consequences their act of compassion would have for humanity and the galaxy at large. The vastness of space stretched before them, a canvas of infinite black punctuated by the brilliant pinpricks of distant stars. Charlie White sat at the helm of their transport ship, his eyes darting between the navigation console and the rear view screen. Behind him, in the makeshift habitat they'd created in the cargo hold, the Vokran family rested, unaware of the growing tension on the bridge. "Charlie," Joe's voice cut through the silence, tight with barely contained alarm. "We've got a problem." Charlie's hands tightened on the controls. "What is it?" Joe's fingers flew over his console, bringing up a holographic display that flickered to life between them. "I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's definitely there. A ship just dropped out of FTL near Calith 9. Carrie leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "Could it be a coincidence? Maybe another survey team?" Joe shook his head grimly. "The energy signature matches the data we pulled from the Vokran's chip. It's them, the ones who abandoned our friends down there." A chill ran down Charlie's spine. He thought of the Vokrans, of the trust they'd placed in him and his team. "They've come back to finish the job," he said, his voice low and filled with determination. "Well, we're not going to let that happen." As if on cue, an alert blared from Joe's console. "They've detected us!" he shouted. "They're powering up weapon systems. Charlie's mind raced, years of combat training kicking in. Carrie, get back there and secure the Vokrans. Joe, divert all non-essential power to shields and engines. We're getting out of here. The transport ship lurched as Charlie pushed it to its limits, accelerating away from Calith 9 and the approaching threat. Behind them, a brilliant beam of energy sliced through the space they'd occupied mere seconds before. That was too close, Joe muttered, his fingers dancing across his console. Charlie, we can't outrun them forever. This ship wasn't built for combat. Charlie gritted his teeth, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that strained the transport's structural integrity. We don't need to outrun them forever. We just need to reach the nearest jump point. Another blast rocked the ship, and alarms blared throughout the cabin. "Shields at 60%!" Joe called out. "We can't take many more hits like that." In the cargo hold, Carrie struggled to keep the Vokrans calm. The adult's eyes were wide with fear, its massive body curled protectively around its cubs. "It's okay," Carrie soothed, even as another impact shook the ship. "We're not going to let anything happen to you." Back on the bridge, Charlie's mind raced. They needed a plan, and fast. "Joe, what's the nearest system with a Galactic Alliance presence?" Joe's fingers flew over his console. "Proxima Centauri. It's a long shot, but if we can make it there, we might have a chance," Charlie finished. "Plot a course. I'll try to buy us some time." With a series of daring maneuvers, Charlie piloted the transport through a dense asteroid field. The pursuing ship, larger and less maneuverable, was forced to slow its advance, but their reprieve was short-lived. "They're charging some kind of energy weapon," Joe shouted. "I've never seen readings like this before." Charlie's heart pounded in his chest. They were out of options. With a silent prayer, he pushed the transport's engines beyond their safety limits. The ship groaned in protest but surged forward, just as a massive energy beam lanced out from their pursuer. Time seemed to slow as the beam approached. Charlie could feel the heat of it even through the ship's hull. But at the last possible moment, their transport slipped into the swirling vortex of a jump point, the energy beam passing harmlessly through the space they'd occupied a fraction of a second before. As the chaotic energies of FTL travel enveloped them, Charlie allowed himself a moment of relief, but he knew their troubles were far from over. "Joe, get me a secure channel to Alliance Command," he ordered. "We need to report what's happened and request assistance." As Joe worked to establish the connection, Charlie made his way back to the cargo hold. The sight that greeted him there made his heart clench. The adult Vokran was trembling, its eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. The cubs whimpered softly, pressing close to their parent. Charlie approached slowly, his hands held out in a gesture of peace. "I'm sorry," he said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone would convey his meaning. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I promise you, we're going to keep you safe." To his amazement, the adult Vokran's trembling subsided. It met Charlie's gaze, and in those alien eyes, he saw a glimmer of understanding and trust. Carrie joined him, her face pale but determined. "What now, Charlie?" He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. "Now, we fight. Not just for the Vokrans, but for every species that's been exploited like this. It's time the Alliance faced the truth about what's happening out here on the fringes." As if in response to his words, Joe's voice crackled over the intercom. "Charlie, I've got Alliance Command. They're not happy." Charlie squared his shoulders. "Patch them through down here. They need to see what we're fighting for." The air shimmered as a holographic projection materialized in the cargo hold. The stern face of Admiral Ledger, head of Alliance operations in this sector, appeared before them. "White, you'd better have a damn good explanation for—" The Admiral's words died in his throat as he took in the scene before him. His eyes widened at the sight of the Vokrans. What in the name of all that's holy is going on there? Charlie stepped forward, his voice steady and determined. "Admiral, we've uncovered something that goes against everything the Alliance stands for. These beings, the Vokrans, were abandoned on a hostile world, left to die, and the ones responsible are part of the Alliance. He went on to explain everything they'd discovered, from finding the Vakrans on Kalith 9 to the pursuit by the mysterious ship. As he spoke, the Admiral's expression shifted from anger to shock, and finally to a grim determination. "This is unprecedented," Ledger said finally. "You realize the diplomatic nightmare you've potentially unleashed." "With all due respect, sir," Charlie replied, "I think we have a chance to do something truly important here, to show that the Alliance stands for more than just political convenience. We have a chance to be better." There was a long moment of silence as the Admiral considered Charlie's words. Finally, he nodded. "All right, White. You'll have our support. Make for Proxima Centauri Station. I'll have a security detail waiting to escort you and your passengers." As the hologram flickered out, Charlie felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They weren't out of danger yet, but for the first time since this wild journey began, he felt hope. Carrie placed a hand on his arm, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Charlie. You've given them a chance." He shook his head, a small smile playing at his lips. "We did it. All of us. And this is just the beginning." As if understanding the gravity of the moment, the adult Vakran let out a low, melodious howl. It was a sound unlike anything Charlie had ever heard, part mournful cry, part triumphant song. The cubs joined in, their higher-pitched voices blending with their parents in a haunting harmony. The sound filled the ship, reverberating through its metal halls and seeping into the very hearts of the human crew. In that moment, Charlie knew with absolute certainty that they were part of something bigger than themselves. They were witnessing the birth of a new understanding between species, a bridge across the vast gulfs of space and biology. As the Vakran's song faded, Charlie turned to his team. "All right, let's get ready. We've got a long journey ahead of us, and I have a feeling it's going to be one for the history books." With renewed determination, the crew of the small transport ship set a course for Proxima Centauri. Behind them, the vastness of space stretched out, full of both danger and promise. And within their ship, an unlikely family of humans and aliens huddled together, united in their hope for a better future. The pursuit wasn't over. Charlie knew the mysterious ship would be hot on their trail as soon as they emerged from FTL. But for now, in this moment of respite, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished. They had saved lives, challenged the status quo, and set in motion events that could reshape the very fabric of galactic society. As he settled back into the pilot's seat, Charlie's resolve hardened. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles they would face, he knew one thing for certain. They would face them together, humans and Vakrans alike. And in doing so, they would show the galaxy the true strength of compassion, the unbreakable bonds that could form between even the most unlikely of allies. The stars streaked by outside the viewports, a testament to the vast distances they had yet to travel. But within the ship, a new kind of space was being bridged. The space between species, between worlds, between hearts. It was a journey that would change not just their lives, but the very course of galactic history. And as the transport ship hurtled through the cosmos, carrying its precious cargo of hope and possibility, Charlie White couldn't help but feel that they were on the cusp of something truly extraordinary. The adventure was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The Proxima Centauri system loomed ahead, a beacon of hope in the vast emptiness of space. Charlie White's hands were steady on the controls of their battered transport ship, but his mind raced with the enormity of what lay ahead. Behind him, in the makeshift habitat, the Vakran family huddled together, their alien eyes wide with a mixture of fear and trust. "We're approaching the jump point," Joe called out, his voice tight with tension. "But Charlie, I'm picking up another signal." "They've found us." Charlie's jaw clenched. They were so close. "How long until we can make the jump?" 2 minutes, Joe replied, "but they'll be in weapons range in less than 1. Carrie's voice crackled over the intercom from the cargo hold. "Charlie, the Vakrans are agitated. I think they can sense something's wrong. Hold them steady, Charlie ordered. We're almost there. The ship shuddered as the first volley of energy blasts from their pursuer grazed their shields. Alarms blared throughout the cabin and Charlie's hands flew over the controls, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that strained the transport to its limits. "Shields at 40%, Joe shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Charlie's mind raced. They needed a miracle, or at least a really good trick. His eyes fell on the nav computer, and a crazy idea began to form. "Joe, how close are we to Proxima Centauri's gravity well?" Joe's fingers danced across his console. "We're just entering the outer edge. Charlie, what are you thinking?" A grim smile played across Charlie's lips. "Something stupid and brilliant. Divert all power to the forward shields and hold on tight." With a sharp bank, Charlie aimed their ship directly at Proxima Centauri's blazing surface. The pursuing vessel, caught off guard by the suicidal maneuver, hesitated for a crucial moment. "Charlie, we're going to burn up." Carrie's panicked voice came over the comm. "Not today," Charlie muttered. At the last possible second, he cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters, using Proxima Centauri's immense gravity to slingshot them around the star. The G-forces were immense, threatening to tear the ship apart, but Charlie's calculations were perfect. They emerged on the other side of the star, their velocity nearly doubled. Behind them, their pursuer struggled to match the maneuver, its larger mass working against it. "Jump point in range!" Joe shouted triumphantly. "Punch it!" Charlie ordered. The familiar disorientation of FTL travel washed over them, and then they were through, emerging in the space above Proxima Centauri Station. A fleet of Alliance ships hung in orbit, their weapons trained on the jump point. Admiral Ledger's voice crackled over the comm. "White, you crazy son of a... Get your ship docked immediately. We'll handle your pursuer." As they maneuvered towards the station, Charlie allowed himself a moment of relief. They'd made it. Against all odds, they'd brought the Vokrans to safety. The next few hours passed in a blur of debriefings and medical examinations. The Vokrans were taken to a specially prepared habitat, designed to mimic the conditions of their home moon. Charlie and his team were hailed as heroes by some and reckless vigilantes by others. But the real challenge was yet to come. 3 days after their arrival, Charlie stood before the Alliance Council, the fate of the Vokrans, and potentially the future of interspecies relations, hanging in the balance. "Mr. White," the Arcturian representative began, her crystalline form shimmering in the chamber's light. "While your actions were undoubtedly brave, they have placed the Alliance in a precarious diplomatic situation. The Zarkai Imperium is demanding the return of what they claim is their property." Charlie's fists clenched at his sides. "Property?" he spat. "We're talking about sentient beings here, beings that were abandoned to die on a hostile world." The human representative, a stern-faced woman named Admiral Wilson, leaned forward. "Be that as it may, Mr. White, we have no formal laws governing the treatment of non-allied species. The Zarkai argue that the Vokrans are a genetically engineered species, created for their purposes." A murmur of shock rippled through the chamber. Charlie felt sick to his stomach. Created or not, they're alive. They feel pain, fear, love. I've seen it with my own eyes. Are we really going to stand by and allow this kind of exploitation to continue? The chamber fell silent, the weight of the decision palpable in the air. Then, to Charlie's surprise, the Vokran adult was brought into the chamber, flanked by a team of xenobiologists. Its eyes immediately found Charlie, and a low, mournful sound filled the air. The effect on the council was immediate. Many leaned forward, their expressions softening as they witnessed the obvious intelligence and emotion in the creature's eyes. Charlie seized the moment. "Members of the council, I ask you to look, really look, at this being before you. Yes, they're different from us. Yes, their origins may be unlike our own, but can any of us truly say they're less deserving of life, of freedom, of dignity?" He took a deep breath, his voice growing passionate.
Humanity's own history is stained with the exploitation of those we deemed lesser. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned better. Now we have a chance to prevent that same tragic history from repeating on a galactic scale. The Vokran, as if sensing the importance of the moment, let out a haunting melody that echoed through the chamber. It was a sound of longing, of hope, of a fierce desire for life. One by one, the council members began to nod. Admiral Wilson spoke first.
Mr. White is right. We cannot claim to be a force for good in this galaxy if we turn a blind eye to such blatant cruelty. I move that we not only deny the Zarkai's request, but that we begin drafting legislation to protect all sentient species, regardless of their origins. The vote was unanimous. As the council dispersed, Charlie approached the Vokran. He placed a hand gently on its massive shoulder, feeling the creature lean into his touch. "We did it," he murmured. "You're going home." The journey to the Vokran's home moon was bittersweet. Charlie and his team had grown deeply attached to the alien family, and the thought of saying goodbye weighed heavily on their hearts. As their ship entered orbit around Velithra, the ice-covered moon that the Vokrans called home, Charlie was struck by its haunting beauty. Vast plains of blue-white ice stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by jagged mountain ranges that gleamed like crystal in the pale light of the gas giant the moon orbited. They landed in a valley sheltered from the howling winds, the ship's sensors having detected a large concentration of Vokran life signs in the area. As the cargo bay doors opened, letting in a blast of frigid air, Charlie felt a lump form in his throat. The adult Vokran stood at the threshold, its cubs pressed close to its sides. For a long moment, it simply stared out at the icy landscape, its chest heaving with deep breaths of the familiar cold air. Then, with a sound that was half howl, half song, it bounded down the ramp. The cubs followed, their excited yips echoing across the valley. Charlie and his team watched in awe as the family rolled in the snow, their joy palpable even across the species barrier. But the Vokrans' homecoming was far from over. From the surrounding ridges, more of their kind appeared. Massive, wolf-like creatures with thick, silvery fur and eyes that gleamed with intelligence. They approached cautiously at first, but as they caught the scent of their long-lost kin, their pace quickened. The reunion that followed was unlike anything Charlie had ever witnessed. The air filled with a cacophony of howls, yips, and that haunting melodic song. The Vokrans greeted each other with gentle nuzzles and playful tumbles, their bodies vibrating with the sheer joy of being together. As Charlie watched, he felt a presence at his side. He turned to find the adult Vokran, the one they'd rescued, the one who had trusted them against all odds, standing beside him. Its eyes, so alien yet so expressive, met his. In that moment, a wave of emotion passed between them. Gratitude, respect, and a deep, abiding affection that transcended the barriers of species and language. The Vokran leaned forward, gently pressing its forehead against Charlie's, in a gesture that needed no translation. "You're welcome," Charlie whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And thank you for trusting us, for showing us what's really important." With a final soft whine, the Vokran turned and loped off to join its pack. Charlie watched it go, his heart full to bursting with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Carrie placed a hand on his shoulder, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We did good, Charlie. We did real good." Joe nodded, uncharacteristically quiet. "So what now? Back to business as usual?" Charlie shook his head, a determined glint in his eye. "No. Now we make sure this never happens again. To any species, anywhere in the galaxy." As they prepared for takeoff, Charlie took one last look at the Vokrans. The family they'd rescued was now surrounded by their pack, finally home, finally safe. It was an image he knew he'd carry with him for the rest of his life. The ship lifted off, leaving behind the icy world and its remarkable inhabitants. But as they set a course back to Alliance space, Charlie knew that this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. They had sparked a change in the galaxy, a ripple that would grow into a wave. And whatever challenges lay ahead, political battles, resistance from those who profited from exploitation, the sheer enormity of changing hearts and minds across countless worlds, Charlie knew they would face them head-on, because they had seen, firsthand, the power of compassion, the strength that came from reaching across the gulf of species to forge bonds of trust and understanding. And in a universe vast and often cold, that warmth was the most precious resource of all. As Velithra faded from view, Charlie settled into the pilot's seat, his resolve hardened. The real work was just beginning. But with the memory of the Vokran's song echoing in his heart, he was ready for whatever the galaxy might throw their way. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Alliance hummed with tension. Representatives from 100 different species filled the tiered seats, their diverse forms a testament to the vastness and variety of life in the cosmos. At the center of it all stood Charlie White, flanked by Carrie and Joe, their faces set with determination. Admiral Wilson, the human representative to the Alliance, stepped forward. Esteemed colleagues, we are here today to address an issue that strikes at the very heart of what this alliance claims to stand for. The exploitation and abuse of sentient species cannot be allowed to continue. I yield the floor to Charlie White, whose recent experiences have brought this critical matter to our attention. Charlie took a deep breath, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. He thought of the Vokrans, of their haunting song, and the trust they had placed in him. With that memory steeling his resolve, he began to speak. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Alliance, I stand before you, not just as a human, but as a witness to both the depths of cruelty and the heights of compassion that sentient beings are capable of. His voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, rang clear and strong. We recently encountered a species known as the Vokrans, abandoned on a hostile world by those who saw them as nothing more than property to be discarded when no longer useful. A murmur of discomfort rippled through the assembly. Charlie continued, his voice growing more impassioned. But let me tell you what I saw in the eyes of these beings. I saw intelligence, emotion, the capacity for love and fear and hope. I saw individuals worthy of dignity and respect, not commodities to be used and discarded. He gestured to the holographic display that sprang to life behind him, showing images of the Vokrans, their reunion on Velithra, the obvious joy and affection they shared with their own kind. Look at them, Charlie urged. Really look. Can any of us truly say they are less deserving of protection than ourselves? The Zarkai representative, a tall, insectoid being, chittered in agitation. This is preposterous. The Vokrans are an engineered species, created for a purpose. They are property, nothing more. Charlie's eyes flashed with anger, but he kept his voice level. And who gave you the right to make that determination? To play God with the lives of sentient beings? He turned back to the assembly at large. My own species, humanity, has a long and painful history of justifying the exploitation of those we deemed lesser. We enslaved our own kind, destroyed ecosystems, drove countless species to extinction. And each time, we found ways to rationalize our actions, to convince ourselves that those we exploited weren't really people in the way we were. The chamber had grown deathly quiet, every being hanging on Charlie's words. But we learned. We grew. We came to understand that diversity of species, of thought, of ways of being is not a threat, but our greatest strength. And now we have the chance to apply that hard-won wisdom on a galactic scale. Charlie's voice softened, filled with emotion. I have looked into the eyes of a Vokran mother as she protected her cubs. I have heard their songs of joy and sorrow. I have witnessed their capacity for trust, even in the face of unimaginable cruelty. They are people, as surely as any of us in this chamber. He straightened, his gaze sweeping the assembly. We stand at a crossroads. We can choose to be a force for compassion and justice in this galaxy, or we can turn a blind eye to suffering and exploitation. The choice we make today will echo through the ages, shaping the very soul of this alliance. As Charlie stepped back, the chamber erupted into heated debate. Species that had long profited from the exploitation of others argued vehemently against any change. Others, moved by Charlie's words, spoke up in favor of new protections. For hours, the debate raged. Charlie and his team watched, their hearts in their throats, as the fate of countless beings hung in the balance. Finally, Admiral Wilson called for a vote on a new set of laws, the Sentient Rights Accord. As the votes were tallied, Charlie felt a hand slip into his. He looked down to see Carrie, her eyes shining with unshed tears. On his other side, Joe stood rigid, his usual sarcasm replaced by tense anticipation. The results appeared on the massive screen at the front of the chamber. For a moment, Charlie's heart sank. The vote was nearly split. But then, as the final tallies came in, a roar of approval swept through the chamber. The Sentient Rights Accord had passed by the narrowest of margins. Charlie sagged with relief, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lift from his shoulders. They had done it. They had changed the course of galactic history. In the days that followed, the implications of the new laws began to ripple out across Alliance space. Species that had long been exploited were suddenly granted protections. Corporations that had built empires on the backs of sentient property found themselves facing legal challenges. It wasn't an easy transition. There was resistance, even violence in some sectors. But slowly, surely, a new era of interspecies relations began to dawn. 3 months after the historic vote, Charlie stood on the observation deck of Proxima Centauri Station, gazing out at the stars. So much had changed, and yet the galaxy spun on, vast and indifferent. He felt a presence beside him and turned to see Admiral Wilson. The older woman's face was etched with new lines of care, but her eyes shone with pride. "You've started something remarkable, Charlie," she said softly. "It won't be easy, but we're on the right path." Charlie nodded, his thoughts drifting to the Vokrans. "I keep wondering if we did enough, if they're truly safe now." Wilson placed a hand on his shoulder. "We can never guarantee absolute safety for anyone in this universe, but we can strive to create a galaxy where compassion and respect are the rule, not the exception. And that's exactly what you've done." As if in response to her words, a notification chimed on Charlie's comm device. He activated it, and a holographic image sprang to life, a message from Velithra. Charlie's breath caught in his throat. There, amid the swirling snows of the Vokran homeworld, stood the family he had rescued. The cubs, now noticeably larger, gambled playfully in the background, but it was the adult that held his attention. It stood tall and proud, its eyes seeming to meet Charlie's across the vast gulf of space. And then, faintly but unmistakably, came the sound of its song. Not a cry of loneliness or fear, but a joyous, triumphant melody that spoke of hope and new beginnings. Tears pricked at Charlie's eyes as the message faded. He turned back to the star-filled vista before him, a smile tugging at his lips. "You know, Admiral," he said softly, "I think we're going to be all right." As they stood there, gazing out at the infinite possibilities that lay among the stars, Charlie felt a sense of peace settle over him. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, new frontiers of ethics and understanding to navigate. But they had taken the first, crucial step. They had chosen compassion over convenience, empathy over exploitation, and in doing so, they had not only saved the Vokrans, but had set in motion changes that would reshape the very fabric of galactic society. Charlie thought of all the beings out there in the darkness, those known and those yet to be discovered. Thanks to their actions, those beings now had a chance at a future free from the threat of enslavement and exploitation. It wasn't a perfect solution. The galaxy was too vast, too complex for any single action to solve all its problems. But it was a start, a beacon of hope in the cosmic night. As he stood there, Charlie made a silent promise to the Vakrans, to all the beings who had yet to find their voice in the galactic community, and to himself. He would continue to fight for what was right, to push the boundaries of understanding and compassion, because that, he realized, was the true legacy of humanity. Not conquest or domination, but the capacity to grow, to learn, to extend the hand of friendship across the stars. The observation deck fell silent, but in Charlie's mind, the Vakrans' song continued to echo, a reminder of what they had accomplished, and a call to all that lay ahead. Hey there again! I'm glad you've come so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button. This is really important to the channel. Really important. And I have one more thing for you. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.